All right, if you're prepping for the AWS Certified Developer exam, you know storage questions are gonna pop up, and they can be tricky. So today, we're gonna clear up the confusion between two really important services, EBS and EFS. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which one to pick for any scenario, and more importantly, why. So here's the game plan. We'll kick things off with the absolute basics, then we'll do a deep dive into EBS, then EFS. After that, we'll put them head-to-head on performance and management, and we'll wrap it all up with a super simple framework so you can ace those exam questions. Let's get into it. Okay, let's get right down to it. When you fire up a server in the cloud, an EC2 instance, you gotta ask yourself a super fundamental question. Where is my data actually going to live? Because the answer to that determines if your data sticks around or just disappears. Let's kick this off with a classic exam-style question, something you're very likely to see. Imagine this. A developer has an EC2 instance, and they're using something called an instance store volume. They stop the instance, maybe to patch it, and then they start it back up. What in the world happens to all the data that was on that volume?
Poof, it is gone. Forever. Seriously, instant store is what we call ephemeral, or temporary. Its life is tied directly to that one instance, and that right there is the whole reason we need persistent storage. It's storage that lives on even if your instance gets stopped, rebooted, or even terminated. This is exactly why services like EBS and EFS even exist.
So when we talk about persistent storage on AWS, you can pretty much break it down into two main flavors. Think of block storage, that's EBS, like a raw physical hard drive that you plug directly into one computer. It's dedicated. Then you have file storage, which is EFS. That's more like a shared network folder, like a server at the office that everyone can connect to at the same time. This analogy is going to be super helpful. All right, so let's dig into that first option, Amazon EBS, our virtual hard drive. The key thing to grab from this definition, and this is a direct exam answer by the way, is that EBS is persistent block storage. It hangs around even if the instance goes away. So if a question asks for a block volume that needs to live on its own, independent of an EC2 instance, ding, 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 the answer is EBS. It's the standard choice for boot volumes and any dedicated storage for a single machine. Now, not all EBS volumes are the same. For most of your everyday stuff, the general-purpose GP3 volume is your go-to. It's got that perfect sweet spot of price and performance. But, and this is a big but for the exam, when you see a question talking about a super important, high-performance database that needs screaming fast I/O, you gotta think bigger. You need provisioned IOPS, specifically the IO2 volume type.
Yeah, let me just double-click on that for a second, because it's a huge exam tip. If you see those keywords, mission-critical database, lowest latency, or high IOPS, your brain should just scream IO2. It's literally built for those high-stress, IO-hungry workloads.
Okay, so we've been saying EBS is like a hard drive for one machine. But is that always the case? Is there a loophole? Can you actually share it?
The answer is kinda. Yes, but with a huge catch. It's a feature called multi-attach, and it only works on the super high-performance IO1 and IO2 volumes. And here's the real kicker, the part you have to remember. All the instances sharing that volume have to be in the exact same availability zone. You cannot, I repeat, cannot share an EBS volume across different AZs. That's a deal breaker for a lot of high availability setups.
So, that limitation we just talked about, no sharing across AZs, is a pretty big deal. What if your application absolutely needs that? Well, that brings us perfectly to our second solution, EFS, the shared file system. And right here, this is the money slide. It directly solves the problem we just identified with EBS. EFS is designed from day one to be a shared resource. So if you get a question that describes an app spread across multiple EC2s in different availability zones, and they all need to read and write to the same files, there's only one right answer, and it's EFS.
And EFS isn't just for EC2s. Oh no, its reach is way bigger. It's the lifeblood for modern apps. Think container workloads that need a shared place to store things, or a website builder like WordPress. And here's another critical exam nugget. Serverless functions using AWS Lambda can directly mount an EFS file system. That's a game changer for persistent shared storage in a serverless world.
Okay, so we know what they are, what they're for. Now let's put them side by side and see how they really stack up in terms of performance and, maybe more importantly, how they scale up when your app gets popular. All right, this is a really important difference to get your head around. With a modern EBS GP3 volume, you can think of size and speed as two separate knobs you can turn.
You can have a tiny little volume that's screaming fast, or a huge one that's just chugging along. You pay for exactly the performance you configure. EFS, though, is different. It's elastic. By default, in what's called bursting mode, its performance actually grows as you add more data. It's designed to scale automatically. You can also provision throughput if you need consistent speed, but that elasticity is its nature.
All right, let's switch gears a bit and talk about some of the management and security stuff. You know, the day-to-day tasks that always seem to show up as questions on the exam.
This is a big one. You have an EBS volume and it's not encrypted. You need to encrypt it. You can't just click an Encrypt Now button. The exam will definitely test you on the correct procedure. And the key is, it's all about snapshots. You have to, 1, take a snapshot of the unencrypted volume. 2, you copy that snapshot, and it's during the copy that you check the encrypt box. And 3, you create a brand new encrypted volume from that encrypted copy. It's a multi-step process.
Okay, what about just plain old backups? Disaster recovery? For EBS, this one's easy. The answer is always EBS snapshots. You just select the volume, click Create Snapshot, and AWS handles the rest. It stores them super durably in S3. That is the standard official way to back up EBS.
Now, EFS has this really cool built-in feature for saving money called lifecycle management. So if you see an exam question about automatically reducing EFS costs, this is what they're talking about. You just set a simple rule, something like, hey, if a file hasn't been touched in 30 days, an EFS will automatically move it to a much cheaper infrequent access storage tier. It's a set it and forget it way to optimize your bill.
Okay, we have gone through a ton of detail. Let's wrap this all up into a nice, simple decision framework, something you can use to nail these questions every single time.
Think of this table right here as your ultimate cheat sheet. Seriously, EBS, block storage, single instance, single AZ. It's all about getting the absolute lowest latency for things like databases. EFS, file storage, for thousands of instances across multiple AZs, this is your go-to for shared content, for containers, and for serverless apps. Let's boil it down even further. It's this simple. Choose EBS when you need that dedicated, high-speed performance for a single machine. Think boot volumes or databases. Choose EFS when you need to share files across multiple machines or even serverless functions, and you want that storage to scale up automatically. If the app needs its own private hard drive, it's EBS. If it needs a public library card, it's EFS.
And really, that's what it all comes down to. When you're designing your next app and you need storage, you now have the mental model to make the right call. Are you giving it a dedicated high-speed personal drive, which is EBS? Or are you plugging it into a massive shared library, which is EFS? You know the answer now, and you're ready to prove it on the exam.